This is Hot Science, and I'm Richard Clarke. I'll be your host today. And we have the latest news in science, technology, the environment, and medicine. So, thank you for joining us, and let's go. Let me start giving you the rundown of the stories we're going to cover today. The first story is, the headline is, "Are They for Real?" A South Korean girl band offers glimpses into the metaverse. And this is the first Korean K-pop band that is successful that is entirely virtual. And in technology, what is GPT-4 and how does it differ from ChatGPT? We're in a period where there is a tremendous amount of activity in AI with new tools coming out every week. And GPT, which was just released a couple of months ago, already has its a pretty major upgrade. By the way, GPT-4 is running on the fifth largest supercomputer in the world. So I think it takes a lot of power to run it, especially when you have 1 million users. Then the environmental story is, scientists find a way to suck up carbon pollution and turn it into baking soda so they can store it in the ocean. This looks like it's 3 times more efficient than other approaches to this carbon, pulling carbon out of the air. And in space and flight, Harvard and Pentagon scientists say that highly maneuverable UFOs appear to defy physics. So it looks like there might be something going on there. And in biology, now there are mice that are born with 2 fathers after a scientific breakthrough, and it could pave the way for the same in humans: 2 fathers and no mother. Then in the human story, The Lord of the Rings. This is a quoting performance that wins this year's Dance Your PhD contest. This contest has been going on for some time. I had never heard of it before, and we'll watch some of the winning entry where they are dancing out their experience with metal oxide chemicals. And it's amazing the creativity that these people have. And in the health, brisk walking for just 11 minutes a day slashes risk of premature death by 23%, says a study of 30 million. So that's a lot to be studied. And it's interesting, and it looks like it doesn't take much to improve your body's health. And this is basically just walking briskly for 11 minutes a day, which seems pretty achievable to me. I've started now in my own daily walking, picking up the speed just to push my heart higher after reading this article. So the first is this story less than 2 months ago. The first music video by a South Korean girl quartet named MAVE went viral, and it was racked up 20 million views on YouTube. And MAVE looks like any other K-pop girl band, except that it only exists virtually. All its 4 members live in the metaverse, and their songs, dances, interviews, and hairstyles were created by web designers and artificial intelligence. Here, let me show you MAVE, if I can find it here. I don't find it here. Let me get it up then. Here we are.
잃어버린 faith, we have to go back. 흐릿해진 feeling 속에 유일한 열쇠. Everyone is heartless, but so we are fearless. 아무것도 막지 못해, never been so careless. 난 투색의 윈리라, the second top of a string of a hoe. So let us sing, say my name, 외쳐, let me hear that thing.
And to me, that all looks pretty realistic. And it's interesting because it shows, what can happen with entertainment as this virtual technology hits it. Now, in Korea, they actually have been working on virtual musicians for some time. The first virtual singer was introduced in 1998. His name was Adam. And then 20 years later, there was a K-pop girl band that were inspired from a video game characters that they tried to introduce. It was not successful, but maybe the time is right for it. The Korean technology has made a lot of progress creating virtual characters, and now they're using new tools and AI to create facial expressions and details like streaks and hairs. And the voices are generated from an AI voice generator, and they can sing in 4 different languages. They can't speak in response to questions, though, so they're not very good in interviews. They have to rely on scripts so far. I bet they can speak in the future version coming on. Choreography was created by human performers and processed by motion capture. And so fans look like in Korea that they've become more used in the last 3 years to consuming content that was video content, not face-to-face content. So maybe that's why the band was successful now. To me, I think the success also was a part of it was what a wonderful job they did rendering the characters. The critics say the problem with these computer characters is that they are not unpredictable, it turns out. So it's hard to have spontaneous interviews with your computerized AI singer. But is this what we're going to have happening to our entertainment? What do you guys think about these computer bands, the virtual singers? I thought they looked pretty cute.
Yeah, but a lot of people are going to lose their job, and I think there's a charm in seeing people sing and perform and make mistakes,
Right.
because that makes them feel real.
Mm-hmm. So I guess they have to program mistakes into their virtual singers.
Oh, Jesus, that's terrible.
Well, you wonder too when they'll come up with virtual sports teams,
Yeah,
and you could have you wouldn't need to go to all this expense of having professional athletes.
That's right. They have the big screen version of one of these football games, and with a geeky looking guy controlling each team.
And they could throw 100-yard passes. I mean,
That's right. I think you still need, would you have real cheerleaders or virtual cheerleaders?
oh, they'd be virtual too. And then you'd get a virtual audience to look at it.
Okay.
The rest of us could get back to work.
Okay. Well, that's will be a job for these Russian bots.
It would destroy the gambling part of it, though, which is big money in sports.
Yes, right. And part of, I guess it still would be unpredictable if the guys were playing Madden football, because you still wouldn't know what's going to happen. Anyway, times are changing.
yeah, that's for sure.
Now, the next is on GPT-4, and I want to show you about a 4-minute video. It's a little longer than I usually show, but it talks about it and shows some real interesting things. One of the things it shows that is just fascinating is a guy making a sketch of a web page, taking a photograph of the sketch and feeding that to GPT-4 and having it write all the code to create the website from his sketch. So I think that's pretty cool.
So let's find out exactly what GPT-4 actually is. OpenAI ran a developer livestream that not only introduced this multimodal AI, they also ran a demo to demonstrate how it's one of the most powerful artificial intelligence engines to this date. It's no surprise that the whole internet, Twitter especially, has gone insane hearing this news. ChatGPT was only released recently, with Bing AI following. In this video, I'm going to cover what GPT-4 actually is, how it's different from previous GPT versions such as GPT-3 and GPT 3.5, and I've also gained access to test it out, so I'll demo some of its use cases too. Let's start off with GPT-4 in comparison to its previous models. It's multimodal now. This simply means that unlike previous versions of GPT, which were only text-based, GPT-4 can accept and process images as well as text. I wouldn't be surprised if there's an audio component to this as well, but for the time being, OpenAI simply did a demonstration showcasing a few examples of their image-to-text processing. The first one is on their website, where they gave AI the difficult task of explaining a joke based on a series of images. This image is of an iPhone, but it's charging with a VGA cable, and GPT-4 accurately was able to identify all the elements in the photo as well as explain the context of the joke. While this sounds pretty simple, this is something that's almost unheard of in previous versions of AI, and I guess that reCAPTCHA will now have a run for its money trying to detect not just bots, but artificial intelligence. The second demo is where the real magic happened. OpenAI showed how you could draw a picture of a website on a napkin, or maybe a piece of paper. Then you can take a photo of it and send it to GPT-4. You can ask it to produce a functional website. In this case, it was a jokes website. In just 10 to 20 seconds, GPT-4 produced all the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript code to reproduce the website, and then it was copy-pasted into an editor and showcased as a functional product. As a developer, I have to say I'm very impressed with this. This is something not very easily done, and I've seen some really cool examples already on Twitter, like Petrio, who was able to create the game Pong within 60 seconds of using GPT-4. OpenAI have also showcased some of the companies that are already working with them to be able to use GPT-4 in their products. These companies have integrated it into services. One of them is Khan Academy. They've integrated it very similar to ChatGPT, but with more customization to work as a personal tutor for those people who are learning educational content. Maybe in the future all our children will be taught by AI, but at least for the short term, it looks like it's definitely a great assistant to have on hand, whether you're doing any type of learning. There were lots of statistics that showcased how GPT-4 performs better than any other model to date, including it being able to pass the LSTAT and the bar, and being in the top quarter percentile, whereas previous versions of GPT-3 were in the lower quarter of that percentile. Other than the difference of being able to also take in visual inputs, it can also produce and handle over 25,000 words of text, which is much larger than previous models. It's also much more creative, being able to edit as well as modify and iterate over technical tasks and writing tasks way more accurately than previous models as well. As an example, you could ask ChatGPT or GPT-3 to summarize Cinderella, and while it could do so, it wouldn't be able to do complex tasks such as being able to summarize it, where every sentence of each word begins with the next letter of the alphabet, A to Z. This is a much more complex task, and yet GPT-4 can do this quite easily. GPT-4 also surpasses ChatGPT in advanced reasoning capabilities. This means that if you're trying to book an appointment between two people's calendars with different availabilities, GPT-4 can better reason and figure out a time that works for both of them. It's also safer and less prone to making errors. OpenAI said that they spent 6 months making sure that GPT-4 is 82% less likely to create requests for disallowed content and 40% less likely to produce fake news, or at least factually inaccurate responses. If you're interested in using it right now, you can do so on ChatGPT Plus, which is the paid version of ChatGPT.
So there is a little bit about GPT-4, and GPT-4 can do more than just power a chat box or write a story for you. For example, with other applications, Duolingo has built a version into its language learning app that can explain where learners went wrong rather than just telling them the correct thing to say. And here's another company, Be My Eyes, who's using GPT's 4 image processing capability to make a tool that can describe the world for a blind person and then answer follow-up questions. So it's a different tool. The work that I've seen done on it says that it in a lot of areas is better than the average human being. And when they gave it an IQ test, it scored 114. So it's smarter than the average person and probably not as smart as any of us. So, and it is to make it available now. I think it is the thing that is put in Bing. You're using the new Bing, aren't you, Norman? Are they using GPT-4 in Bing? Otherwise, the only way you get it is through a $20 a month subscription. Anyway, moving along.
Well, before you leave it, I think that's the one that said that you could take a photo of the fridge contents and it would figure out what your menu could be from the leftovers in your fridge.
Right. And they kind of showed that briefly going by, but that's one of the use cases that they gave.
The other thing is, it must cost a fortune to operate this system. How long is it going to be free?
Right.
And how are they going to pay for it? With advertising or subscriptions or?
Well, certainly building it into their Bing, then there's a lot of subscription money that goes into browsers. And so you would think somehow advertising is going to end up being a part of it. But your question, how they're going to pay for it, is a good question, because it takes, they say, about 10 times more computing power to answer a query in ChatGPT than it does in Google search. And so right now they are giving a lot of it away, and then the paid users, they pay through subscriptions. And the thing that's generating money is they also are making their API available, and there is a small cost every time you use the API to access it. And as I say, I know it's expensive to run. They use, as I said before, the 5th biggest supercomputer in the world to run it. This computer that Microsoft had made for it has 250,000 processors and 100,000 GPUs. Those are the things that are used for the AI work. And the way the generations go on the hardware now, it's actually obsolete by the time they had it built, because there are new versions like of the GPU chips that are available that are faster. So it's one of the problems trying to keep current with big systems. Anyway. Things are changing, and there are lots of guys spending lots of money on this now. The Chinese have their first Chinese language system that has been released, that is their version of ChatGPT. So anyway, proceeding along now, scientists have found a way to suck carbon pollution directly from the air and turn it into sodium bicarbonate and store it in the ocean. And this technique is 3 times more efficient than current carbon capture technology that's important because right now this particular direct air capture, which is what they're working on here, the direct air capture systems that they have are presently too expensive, and it costs them multiple $100s per ton to pull the CO2 out, and that cost is not acceptable. This brings it down to a more attractive cost, but they still don't know what it is like in production because this was a development project. They are now, the people who are doing the project are saying the next step is to take it out of the lab and test it. And they're talking about setting up 2 or 3 sites around the world, since they are storing it by dissolving the bicarbonate of soda back into the ocean. The guys who are developing it say then the place to put it is by the ocean. So that's what they're planning to do. To make this work, they've used copper to modify the absorbent material, and the use of copper has made it much more effective and makes a material that can be this easy to make and cheap to make. And so maybe this is a way that will drive down the cost of carbon capture. There's still one of the questions with carbon capture is this direct air capture that they're trying here. The difficulty with it is the CO2 in the atmosphere is just 0.4% of the atmosphere, so it's not very dense. And so some people are saying, we should go after it in more concentrated forms, like out of existing smokestacks and things like this. But the governments around the world are saying that the problem is so severe that they need to be investing in this kind of direct air carbon capture and figure out how to do it so it can be cost effective. Maybe this is a step along the way. Any thoughts?
I did a little calculation. I calculated 2 billion in order to over the amount of CO2 that's contributed by cars in the world, and this plan would do equivalent of 800 cars a year. So you need an awful lot of these, or at least a lot bigger ones.
Right. Well, the first system that was started, that's still at the lower efficiency. And, what I think it shows is that not only do we need a lot of them, but we need systems that are way more efficient. Because like you say,
more efficient. And
the good thing about the Iceland system is that it takes a lot of power to run these, and they're running it from geothermal from volcanoes around Iceland. Anyway, this technology has a long way to go before it'll be useful.
Yeah, I think so too. But it's certainly in the right direction.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's still a new enough technology that, a new enough thing they're trying to do, that this is the kind of places where you see developments that make big increases in the ability of the technology. Having this be 3 times better than the earlier way to solve the problem is still a pretty big step.
It is.
Even if it's not enough. Okay. And now the next story we have is Harvard and Pentagon scientists say highly maneuverable UFOs appear to defy physics. And, there's been a lot of information released about UFOs recently, including several high-profile UFO sightings that are being investigated by the Pentagon, and researchers analyzing the data, and they're finding that the numbers just don't add up. And if you look at it at face value, there's stuff that just doesn't make sense. These, what they call highly maneuverable UFO sightings, don't appear to abide by the laws of physics. One example is at the speed they're traveling, they should be generating a fireball from the friction of their surface and the air, and that fireball should have a resulting radio signature that's detectable on radar. But so far, none of those signatures have been spotted. So if you take the data at face value, you say, hey, there's something going on that we don't know what it is. Maybe it's the real UFOs. But a lot of the scientists are saying maybe the problem really is a measurement problem. These images are at great distance. They haven't done a good job of being able to actually evaluate the distance. And so trying to do this based on inaccurate distant measurements, then and data from just single sources is not good data. And so they're saying before we'll say these things violate the laws of physics, we got to get some more good data. But it's interesting to me that they are finding, now that they're looking at it and releasing the data, there are some of these cases that just can't be explained, and maybe we're going to find real UFOs amid all of this data that just doesn't fit. What do you guys think? Ready for our UFOs?
Well, in the 1870s, after Darwin issued his Origin of the Species book, Lord Kelvin disputed it and said that based on all the physics calculations that they knew at the time, the sun couldn't have enough fuel to have lasted the billions of years necessary for Darwin's evolution, that it would have only lasted a few million years. And so that was a real threat to Darwin's theory. And it wasn't until they discovered fission and fusion and radioactive decay and determined how the sun really works that they were able to show where Lord Kelvin was wrong. So the only thing that suggests is there's a lot that we don't know that we still have to find out that may explain the way these UFOs are work, or how the images are fooled into existence.
So certainly I can understand the scientists say, before we go crazy, we got to get better measurements.
Yeah.
And even though I like the idea of UFOs and visitors from outer space and stuff like that, I'm still ready to get better measurements before I believe they're here now.
Well, and if you look at all the other topics on this futurism website, they've got a lot of nonsense coming forward that there must be a ready public that sucks it up.
Sure. Well, all you need to do is to get some eyeballs to generate the clicks and the ad revenue. Okay. Continuing to move along. I thought the biological work was going to end up meaning for reproduction that they're going to be able to figure out how to do it without men. So we were just going to be obsolete in the future. But it's interesting here, they did the work and of reproduction without women, at least in the generative part of it. So the researchers successfully created eggs by turning male XY chromosome pairs into female XX chromosome pairs, and then fertilizing them with a normal sperm, and then letting that egg come to maturity. I'm sure there they used a female, they were implanted into a female mouse womb. I don't think they implanted wombs into the male mouses either, so there is still a mother involved, but not in the first step. And so they created 7 mice pups, which appeared healthy and had a normal lifespan. And they believe that they will someday be able to use this technique to allow human male couples to have children together using an egg created from their own cells. Here they used a skin cell. From the skin cell, they got stem cells and used the stem cells to create the egg after they had, from the stem cells, deleted the Y in the XY chromosome and paired it with another X from that same male. And so they think doing this with human cells is going to be harder than with mouse cells because humans have a longer gestation and development period. But the scientist doing this work, he says he thinks the problems could be overcome within about 10 years. So maybe in 10 years, it won't be necessary to have a woman to have your new baby.
So where's the fun?
Well, what's the point? If say for example, you're a gay couple and you would like to have children, and you'd like to have your children, not somebody else's children, and this is a way to do it.
Yeah.
As I say, you still, we have not got to the point where we have artificial wombs yet. And so to take the baby through its birth period, you either have to implant them into a woman or implant a womb into a man. I think it's easier to plant the egg in an existing womb. But people like to have children. They like to have their own children. It's a way for some other couples to do that. And the medical technologists are happy to do it because they make a bunch of money in the process. It's funny the things these people think is important.
I see that it's probably 20, 30 years away, however, maybe longer.
Mm-hmm.
The trouble with some of this research is it gets, like in this case, maybe gay couples all excited about it, and then they find out that no, not yet, not in your lifetime.
Not in your lifetime, and as I say, I bet it is an expensive process.
Oh wow, you know it.
Yeah, and meanwhile, there's 1 billion people in the world suffering from malnutrition and other inadequacies, and this is what we're spending our efforts on.
Well, this is one of the advantages of our capitalistic medical system. Then it's worthwhile for somebody to make these processes that help a few rich people.
Well, you wonder whose money how this is being funded. Is it venture capital or is it taxpayer money?
Good question. Or is it just normal R&D budget for big pharma? Don't know. But somebody's funding it. Okay, proceeding along, the next story is one of the dancing their PhD, and I just want to show you the video before I go any further, if I can find it. Nope, that's not it. It's just a little hard for me to set up multiple videos. Give me a moment and I'll find it again.
Hmm.
Well, I watched it on the link, and it makes you think that Monty Python is running the world.
Well, here you are. You have these creative guys.
Let's get it.
Metal atoms and molecules bond. They assemble in a porous frame. Metal organic framework is the name. Diverse materials with so much potential, but they're made as bulky powders. Not very useful to harness MOF's power. We need to make them small. One MOF nanoparticle to rule them all.
And the elements of their dance are showing different parts of the guy's PhD thesis.
But we had something else in mind to control crystal growth. Atom modulator, another molecule to confuse the linkers. Particles form quickly and then growth stops. Kinetically trap crystals and make nanomorphs.
So anyway, PhD students, I think, are different nowadays than in my day, and it sure seems to me amusing that there is apparently an international contest every year about PhD students creating videos like this and trying to figure out a way to express their PhD thesis in dance and other performances. So this was not like what school was like when I was in college, and I was in a pretty far out college, but nothing like this. Now, the one thing that is also interesting about this to me is, we have all this AI stuff that is being created. And one analysis that I heard was some spiritual teacher, internationally famous, saying that he thinks what these AIs are doing is they're making the human linear thinking obsolete, because that's exactly the kind of stuff that can be done by these AI systems. So to move forward, we're going to have to learn to use our brains in a different way. And I think maybe these dancing PhD students are an example of trying to think about things in a different way. Maybe this is the future. Okay. So no more comment on that. Let me move along to our health story. And walking at a brisk pace, just 11 minutes a day, slashes the risk of premature death almost a quarter, according to new research. And this is a big study, a meta study of a number of studies. It looked at 196 peer-reviewed studies that covered about 30 million participants. So it's got a lot of data, and it shows that one of the things it shows, the recommendations from the health people are that to keep good heart health, that we need to exercise at least moderate intensity, 150 minutes per week. And a lot of people feel like that's too much. That would be, almost half an hour a day or 20 minutes a day. And so they looked at the data, and they found in the data people who got half of that is 75 minutes a week of moderate exercise, had a 23% lower risk of early death. And that was a 17% lower death rate for cardiovascular disease and a 7% lower death rate for cancer. So we're at an age where most of us, or many of us, have learned that we have to exercise to take care of ourselves. And this says that just 11 minutes a day of walking at a brisk pace provides pretty significant benefits. And, I've been walking every day for years. And after reading this, then I'm making sure that at least part of my walking every day is at a brisk pace. And, I'm happy to reduce my chance of a premature death. Anybody else?
Well, there's some other suggestions at the bottom of the page. It says you should eat pomegranates and drink black tea. So maybe you could add those to your regimen. I don't know.
Well, I walk every day, almost every day at least, on my treadmill for 20 minutes. And I cover, according to the meter, just about 8/10 of a mile.
Uh-huh. Anyway, I walk
Yeah,
every
because
day. Sometimes I've seen you walking, and what I've done is some of the walking now, I turn up and walk at a brisk pace. For me, that means walking just about as fast as I can walk. And I can tell it's different on my system because I can feel the higher exercise level. And I hope it's good. I'm happy to do it. It's not, for me, I don't have to make much of a change to accommodate this in my life.
Well,
well,
the Galapagos tortoise lives to be about 150 years old, and they move pretty slow. So if they could speed those guys up, maybe they could live to be 200 years old.
Maybe I actually am more interested in how long I live than how long a turtle lives, though.
Oh, yeah. Well, the other thing you should do is file a flight plan before your walk. So if you have a heart attack, people will know where to look for you.
Uh-huh.
yeah, it's
Well,
nice.
I was a little disappointed they didn't tell you kind of precisely how fast you had to walk. I mean, a moderate intensity, I don't know what that means.
well, again,
They could
that
have done
said
it.
brisk,
I don't know what that means for sure.
right?
Brisk for you might be pretty slow.
Sure. But again, it's whatever is brisk is faster than just my normal walking pace. And I know it's faster and I can feel the difference in the exercise level on my body. And I can tell the difference because I get from here to there faster.
Well,
They
you can
could
prove
have
it to you.
they could have told you to get into your target zone as defined by one of a number of websites. I know what my target zone is, and so I'm going to say that if I get in my target zone for at least 11 minutes, then I'm going to do good.
Uh-huh. And certainly, however you read it, the evidence says that for old people, doing something that at least is a little bit strenuous regularly is one of the things that's good for our heart. And while I've been exercising regularly for about 15 years now, none of it is real high intensity exercises. So I'm looking for ways in some of the stuff I do to increase the intensity.
Probably running with the bulls at Pamplona would work.
Sure, you have to do it every day, though.
Yeah. Well, get your own bull.
That's right. And the thing I like about walking briskly is I've never been much of a runner. And so I don't have to run at all. Anyway, that's what we got for the week.
Well, it was interesting.
And thank you for joining me. And we'll see you next week. And adios, amigos.
Okay.
Thank
See you,
you,
Richard.
Richard.
Thank you, Richard.